God, there's nothing more sexy. Welcome to another episode of Bad Book Bingo, the game where I read a terrible book and try to get bingo. I'm your host, Victoria, and today we are reading, drumroll please, Taming the CEO by Layla Hagen. Not to be confused with like the 4 other books by this name, but this is the one that has over 500 Amazon reviews, and the overall rating is above 4.5 stars, so it's gotta be good. Right? I picked this one because I really wanted to do something that was enemies to lovers and something that was, frankly, completely different from The Sudden Asylum, which, there's something about the clean polish of an office-y based romance that really feels like a good palate cleanser from whatever the fuck Sudden Asylum was. But this is the latest in a long series of this family of brothers all hooking up. Not together. Stop it. Just hooking up with other people that they're not related to. Okay, let's just get into it before I dig myself a bigger hole, shall we? So the couple that we're going to talk about this time is Maddox and Kimmy. Maddox opens us up. He is at the celebratory dinner celebrating the acquisition of this new hotel that he's going to run. I'm not sure if it's like land or like an actual hotel. It seems like it's just land that they're going to develop into a hotel. And he's super pumped. He's going to be the CEO of this new hotel because he comes from a family of 8 brothers, which is too many brothers. And they have this like business empire together passed down from their dad. So little Nepo baby romance. We love it. Nepo babies deserve love too. He is celebrating. He's going to be the CEO. He's hanging out with his bros. They keep calling each other brother. Like, see, brother, I got this. Or like, hey, brother, I'm your brother. Like, I don't personally have brothers. So maybe I don't know how it really goes, but I'm pretty sure brothers just call each other like dingus or booger. As they're celebrating, they talk about how they want to expand the hotel as they're developing it into the land next door, which they don't yet own. They've been having a little bit of trouble with the owner and his hot daughter, getting them to sign off. I can't imagine what the conflict of this book is going to be. The land next door is like this, they call it an adventure park. It's like one of those places that you can do like the tree walking and climbing and like zip lining and like that sort of vibe. So that's fun. That's different. It's not a bakery. So they have to get both the father and the daughter on board. It seems like the father, who is part owner, is on board and wants to sell, but the daughter, they haven't been able to convince her yet. So Maddox is like, no, don't worry, brother. I'll take care of it. I have the schmoozing charm. He says it in basically the same kind of delivery. The dialogue in this book is so flat. Nobody talks like this. I think at one point the heroine says, thank heavens, this 30-year-old woman. It doesn't really flow with anybody, and it's a little hard. We're not off to a good start. I'm going to say needs an editor, if only for the my brother shit. I think it's really interesting that we get Maddox's perspective before we get Cammy's, meaning that the author wants us to kind of like identify with this guy. And I think it would have been better if we'd known less about him. There's just not a whole lot to like about a wealthy real estate developer. Like, based on my interactions with similar plots in like a Hallmark Christmas movie context, I feel like this works better if it's like a rival deli owner, which is absolutely a movie that I've watched, or like some other rival business, or like a small upstart, rather than this like CEO of part of a giant corporation. The whole thing about the series is that all of the brothers are CEOs of different parts of the company, which is okay, fun, sure, great, good for them. But like There's just nothing less sexy to me than just an asshole, wealthy real estate developer who's just like taking this land that we assume the heroine is attached to just because he can. Like, there's not really a sense of like why they need this land, or if like it seems like they could develop the hotel without it. It's never like if we can't do this project if we don't get this land, we need this land. This book just feels, it just lacks a little life in it. It feels like someone wrote this very quickly in order to appease the Amazon algorithm rather than trying to write a good book. Like, this is like, I have an outline, I'm hitting all of the points, this is what you told me to do, I am hitting it, I'm writing it, this is, like, it just lacks a bit of soul, man. So Maddox says that he's going to handle this thing. And the last thing he says in the chapter is, I'm going to send the dad an email. So he sends him this email, and then he says, all jokes aside, I had a plan. I was going to send Samuel an email beforehand. I suspected Cammie was playing hard to get because she wanted more money. It was a common tactic in negotiations. Is it? Really? Oh my god. Wow, Maddox, you're like so experienced and you like really know businessy stuff. I feel like that's supposed to be my reaction, but the whole book is like this, of like it keeps adding on these little sentence fragments to like explain things that we already know. I'm a person with a brain. It just feels like the author is not giving me credit to like keep up with the twists and turns of Taming the CEO, and that really bothers me. But Maddox's whole plan is to send an email and then go over there and be like, just sign the documents. That's his master plan. So we'll see how that goes. The next chapter, we see Cammie. She is baking because, of course, she's baking because she's a protagonist in a romance novel. The banana bread is supposed to be really good. Good for her. It seems like she doesn't want to sell the place because dead mom. So that's fun. We can't check off orphan because her father is still alive, unfortunately. But like, you get half a point. Based on the email, Maddox had set up like a dinner, and Cammie's dad gets a migraine at the last minute and can't go, so Cammie has to go by herself. She puts on stilettos and a business suit, and stilettos are really hard for her because she's so adventurous and down to earth. So she never wears high heels. She's like, there's nothing wrong with not wearing high heels. It's just a cliche. Like, just wear a kitten heel. Nobody asked for 9-inch stilettos. It's kind of, that would be weird to show up in a business meeting, actually. Again, just the inherent, like, I am ticking the box. The soullessness of this book makes me feel a little insane. Okay, can we just say oops, no personality already? Like, we're gonna get there. I promise we're gonna get there. I'm just gonna. I've also checked off too many in this series because 8 CEOs is too many. Oh, and we also find out in this chapter that when Cammie's mom died, she left her share of the adventure park to Cammie and not to her husband that she was still married to, which is really weird. But okay. But essentially it gives Cammie a reason to like, it has to be like a 2 yeses situation. Anyway, she gets to the restaurant by herself, and there's this really hot guy at the bar, and he's talking to the bartender, and he's bitching about, she's in this small town, obviously. He's bitching about how there's nothing to do in this small town, and it's kind of a dump, and it's terrible. Which, like, offends Cammie, and is somewhat understandable, but also every person that I've met from a small town would agree with that statement. So she gets really kind of, it's not off to a great start. And he's like, I'm not an asshole. I'm just blunt and honest. I'm always honest. That's his thing. So they go and they like sit down at a table and they kind of start talking. And he's just kind of giving her like really straight answers. He's just not offering a whole lot. He's not bringing a lot to the table. But then Cammy accidentally bumps him with her leg under the table, and they both like freeze like deers in headlights because of just the insane attraction between them from bumping legs under the table. After that, Maddox is like, oh, great, I'm going to flirt with her because she's super hot. And then Cammy gets mad that he's flirting with her because she assumes it's to get her to sign off the thing, which is completely reasonable. And she like walks out. So that's their adorable meet cute. It's great. So after that, Maddox has to go the next day to a family dinner because apparently they just always have all of their family meals together, all 8 of those brothers, and grandma. And grandma is there. So there's just so many of them. So he has to admit that like he didn't get the lady to sign, but that she's really hot. And then someone says, under no circumstances are you to let our matchmaking granny Jeannie alone with this girl, otherwise you're going to end up together. I'll give you one guess as to what the next scene is. So Maddox immediately gets in a car with his grandmother and drives her over there so that she can be alone with Cammy, even though he's like, I don't want to be with her. I will say, apparently it's a thing in this series that the grandma keeps like matchmaking and like hooking up all these couples, which in real life would be awful and horrifying. But in fiction is kind of cute. Jeannie's like a standard sassy grandma. But I am going to check off meddling family. So when they get to this adventure park, the grandma is like, this is almost like a forest. Wow. You have to build adventure parks in forests. Like you don't just like plant the trees accordingly. Like you find good trees and then you put the stuff, like they're in a forest, Grandma. Are you aware of where you are right now? I don't know who's lost, if it's me, if it's the author, if it's Grandma, I don't know, but someone is not gluing in here. Cammy decides to go around and give them a tour. She's showing them around, and Grandma Jeannie is like, oh, so what did you study in college? And Cammy says that she studied English and like a couple of foreign languages. And I'm just gonna put the quote up, but she is shocked when Grandma Jeannie guesses that she wanted to teach. There are so few things that you can do with those degrees. As someone with a fairly useless Bachelor of Arts degree whose partner has an English degree and is a teacher, Grandma Jeannie deserves very little credit for making that assumption. But Cammy is like, how did you know? Or at least that's how it comes off with the way that the stilted dialogue is. And I'm kind of cluing in that Cammy is not that bright. Cammy is not that bright. Jeannie doesn't really get a whole lot of alone time with Cammy. She like tries to talk to her a little bit, but it's like people are coming in and out. And then Cammy and Maddox get a couple of minutes alone and are like immediately offending each other over like the slightest thing. Like it's not... Like Maddox is kind of a jerk. Like I wouldn't want to have dinner with him, but also I feel like if his main personality trait is supposed to be I'm a ruthless businessman and I'm an asshole, you are not selling me on that. This guy is just like a standard kind of selfish white guy. This is like a totally normal level of jackassery, frankly less than I would assume from a real estate developer. I'm gonna need him to amp it up a little bit. I'm gonna need him to be the villain in his own story, you know? You gotta give me like actual insults or like scathing commentary, but so far he's just genuinely being honest about his shit, which like is impolite, but he's not being like your shit is worthless. He's like, this business isn't franchisable and you can't afford to expand, so like why don't you sell it because you can't make more money off of it. And she's like, how dare you tell me that my business is a shithole? And I'm like, he's not saying... They're just constantly getting offended by each other. They just don't communicate. So anyway, that's how that ends, solidifying the fact that they are now sworn enemies after 2 negative interactions. We find out that, this is a shocker, Maddox has daddy issues. There's a whole thing about his dad having like a secret second family, which honestly sounds like a more interesting story than this one. But yeah, daddy issues. As a result of the tour, Maddox discovers that Cammy has an emotional attachment to some of the trees that are there. There's like specifically like the dead mom tree. So he goes back to the developers and is like, okay, can we like save some of these and like keep some of these? And everyone at that meeting is like, ooh, do you want to save it for a girl? Are you a big softie now? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a crush on the girl? Are you doing like, this seems to be the first smart business move Maddox has actually made, of like, okay, she doesn't want to sell to me because of these trees. Let's see if we can make a plan to keep these trees and then we can negotiate. Like, that's a perfectly normal. I think it's just like, oh, a man is paying attention to what a woman wants. He must want to fuck her. So after that meeting, Maddox goes with one of his brothers, one of his many brothers that I am not going to bother trying to keep straight. It would be like we could do a whole conspiracy wall up here. No thanks. He goes with a brother to get a bite, and he, of course, runs into Cammy eating by herself, and his brother's like, okay, bye, have fun. And for some reason, Cammy lets him sit and have lunch with her. I personally wouldn't. If one of my sworn enemies was like, hey, you're eating alone, can I like join you? I would tell them to fuck off. But she is nicer than me, apparently. And eventually they get around to playing darts at this diner. They like do a little wager, and like Cammy's unexpectedly good and she beats him, and like I like that sort of thing. Like, as a competitive hot person myself, that's sexy and hot and I like that. But their banter is dry as a bone. Like, I don't get the sense that there's any actual chemistry between anyone in this book, especially not them. So like, watching them kind of bond over this thing, it's not like, oh, some sexy playful ribbing. Oh my god. It's just like two people having a somewhat awkward conversation over a game of darts. During this game of darts, however, we are introduced to the villain of the piece, Slimebag Bill. They don't call him Slimebag Bill, but I'm calling him Slimebag Bill. He's like this guy that Cammy went on like one date with in high school, which was at least 15 years ago for her. And the guy is now like the mayor's son and like involved in town council, is just kind of like ogling her. And Maddox is really annoyed that this guy is ogling her, even though he's been doing the same thing for the past hour. Like, my dude, you can't get all judgy about what a perv he is when you've done the exact same thing. He keeps talking about like her boobs and her tank top and like all of that stuff, and like, fine, sure, but like you're equally as bad as he is, my guy. So by now we're close to the 25% mark, and Cammy is already like, maybe I misjudged him, maybe he's really not so bad, which, no. First of all, he was never that bad to begin with. Second of all, the only reason she's saying that stuff is because he's talked about how much he likes his family, and like, I think she was warmed by the grandma thing. Total depraved, selfish assholes also care about their family. You can do both at the same time. That doesn't mean you're a good person if you like your mom. Sorry. That doesn't mean you get a pass for like just generally being kind of a wet blanket about things. But okay, Cammy, just we'll go with it. We'll go with it. There's also just like some quotes from Maddox that make me feel like he's absolutely following a bunch of those Instagram inspirational quote #grind set, #wake up and grind accounts. Like, that's his vibe, which nope, no sir. Now this is my favorite part. So Maddox somehow finds out through the grapevine that Cammy is doing a couple of renovations on the house. He pops over. Cammy is like up on a ladder, struggling to repair her roof. from a YouTube tutorial. This girl is an idiot. I'm sorry. There's a lot of things that you can learn from YouTube. Significant structural home repair, maybe not one of them. So Cami is not all there. Not using all of the light bulbs in the sockets up there. Maddox, however, is apparently a roofer and totally knows how to fix that shit. So he does for her. And then they like make out a little bit. And if I was Cami, I would not trust this, because you met him like a week and a half ago and got mad at him for trying to seduce you in order to like make this big deal. And now this guy's still trying to seduce you to make this big deal. And like, I would still be on the fence. He hasn't really done anything to make me think that like this is genuine, even though we can see in his point of view that this is genuine. But like, she can't see that. She is absolutely the most trusting person. Next, we have a scene where there's like this big rainstorm brewing. Maddox, for some reason, immediately drives over to Cami's place to make sure that she's okay. It's like a rain and windstorm. I feel like she's fine, dude. It's not like a Category 5 tornado. But okay. I guess he's just being hot and protective. We'll call it that. So Cami has, meanwhile, injured herself because she's out trying to like fix the zip lines in the middle of a storm for some reason. Like a storm that would like knock down trees. Seems kind of counterintuitive. So he like takes her inside and like bandages her up, and then, oh no, the storm is too bad. You can't go anywhere. We have to be stuck in this tiny little adorable cabin together. Let me make some mulled wine. Girl. We're all shocked about what happens next. They hook up. I personally question Maddox's ability to make any woman come, but Cami seems to be having a good time. It's very vanilla, which is fine. We're not discovering any new kinks today. Frankly, after the Sutton Asylum, maybe we need a break from the kinks. Maybe vanilla is just what we need. But he doesn't... I don't know. I'm not buying that he's especially talented in bed. I'm just not. So we have all of that, and then we get a POV with Cami, and she's talking to her dad, and it turns out that she thought that her dad had been joking about wanting to retire. He's like 75, and because he said once that he never wanted to retire, she was like, okay, he never wants to retire, okay. And then now at 75, he's been telling her, hey, let's sell this place so I can retire. And she's like, oh, Dad, you're so silly. But no, he actually wants to retire. Girl, let him retire. So she finally like clues into that in the next scene, and she's like, oh, well, maybe I should sell so that, because she can't buy out his other half of the business, so like they have to sell together. So like she's like, okay, well, maybe I will sell. And it just really takes the wind out of the sails of the conflict if Maddox doesn't then have to do anything to convince her. Like, they didn't really talk about the deal when they were alone in the cabin together. They were just hooking up. She didn't need Maddox's convincing at all, actually. This was not really an issue. This entire book could have just been like her working on her relationship with her dad and communicating with her dad about like moving on from this business. But instead we have Maddox just like shoehorned in there. So I'm going to say this isn't real conflict. So now that Cami's pretty sure that she's going to do the deal, she goes down to have dinner in Boston with Maddox. They go to this really fancy place and eat a lot of really good sounding food. The conversation feels like being back on a first date with someone that you don't really have that much in common with, and you're just like kind of scrabbling awkwardly to keep the conversation flowing about the two things you have in common. It's not giving me madly in love vibes. Cami's also throughout this interaction being like, oh, he's like genuinely so sweet. He's such a softie, as he's talking about his family, and like he's not saying anything especially endearing. He's just like, I give a shit about my enormous family, but also this is me being really cynical. He goes on to say that like, yeah, well, I was working on this project with Gabe, but like Gabe was being really overworked, so I decided to step in and handle it, even though it's going to be a lot of work for me. And she's like, wow, you're so selfless and kind. And like wanting to work so that you get a big piece of this enormous empire, so you get to be a CEO, which in a hotel makes me feel like it's really not a whole lot of work once you get the thing running, right? Like CEOs generally don't do much, and especially not for a hotel. Like all he has to do is like make sure that they get the land, which they already did, and then like you'd have a construction manager to manage the like he's not doing anything. He doesn't really have a whole lot to do other than like meddle in other people's jobs. This is not him being selfless. This is him wanting to make a buttload of money for doing no work. They're trying to make it seem like because he likes his family that like he's secretly not an asshole, which also the whole title of the book is Taming the CEO. You can't tame the CEO if he was secretly tame the whole time. It turns out he's not a complete asshole all the time. He's just a complicated and nuanced human being. To be clear, I don't think that this is realistic, but what I wanted from this book was for the force of his love for her to change him into a better person. That is what Taming the CEO sold me on. That's like a Beauty and the Beast kind of thing, regardless of like how you feel about that sort of narrative. That's kind of where I thought this was going, and it's a little less satisfying to just be like, oh, he was a good person all along. Like, there's no plot here. Okay, it's fine. After this beautiful dinner, they go home and bone, which is really interesting to me because Cammy spent like half the dinner complaining about how bloated she was and like how full she is from eating so much food, and they like go home and immediately do all of these crazy positions, and I'm just like, I would not want to eat the equivalent of a giant Thanksgiving dinner and then immediately get to work. Like, you gotta give me an hour or two for that to settle, you know, if I'm gonna be doing vigorous physical activity. Maddox then has a whole like, this woman is mine thing mid-orgasm, which like it's been 2 weeks. They've been on, let's say, 4 dates so far, 2 of which have ended with her basically storming off. So let's maybe wait to like discuss the relationship a little. Let's see how it goes before we're like putting labels on things and being like, I own you. You know? Let's give it a month, shall we? I'm going to say red flag control freak because this behavior only gets worse. It does not improve. It only gets worse. Also, I'm going to say not physically probable for the sex immediately after an incredibly large and rich dinner. It's possible, not probable. So the next morning, they go clothes shopping because she didn't bring any overnight clothes for some reason. And then he like takes her on this tour, which is, I think, basically like a flashback to one of the other books. This is, I think, 6th or 7th in this series, so like this is pretty late, and there's lots of Easter eggs from the other ones in this one. If you wanted to go back and read the whole series, it's almost all there. You could just binge this entire thing in a week if you wanted to. And then for lunch, or like an early, the timeline's confusing. Anyway, let's say it's for lunch. He takes her to like this big family event with like all of the brothers. They just always get together all the time because they, as CEOs, have very free schedules. This is their 5th date, and he's already taking her to like meet everybody, which feels a little premature, Maddox. Just a little. She's so special, though. She's so special. Oh, one thing that really icked me about this series is that one of the guys introduces his partner as, "This is my Zoe." Something about it makes her seem a little more objectified than if he'd just been like, "This is Zoe." You know, I don't like it. I don't want to read that one. At this lunch, Cammy announces that she's going through the sale. So she's like made the decision. She's like committing to selling the thing. It's 67% into the book. We are going to need some more conflict. One thing I know about romance novel structure is that there's generally a 3rd act breakup, so I'm waiting for that. Let's get to it because like this is. So Cammy goes back to her small town after this wonderful day. She's having dinner with her dad, and she tells him that yeah, I'm gonna go through the sale. And also, by the way, Maddox and I are dating. And her dad is like, this is a bad idea. This is really unprofessional of him. I'm gonna like have some words with him. This is not okay. Reasonably, I think. Because again, it's been like 2 weeks. No, I think the dad is on point with this. And if this was not a romance novel, Cammy makes her dad promise not to go and have a conversation with him, even though one single conversation would probably like solve this whole thing. It's not a real conflict if one conversation between the two people would solve it. I know people communicate poorly, but like, you gotta give it a little something else here. So, based on this decision, Cammy starts thinking about starting a new business for herself in town. This sounds nothing at all like teaching or going traveling, which were dreams that she had mentioned before and dreams that they had like reinforced before with the grandma asking about her future plans. So we're just throwing all of that foreshadowing out the window. So she wants to find retail space to put in this little like board game cafe, essentially. She's gonna like bake and like there's gonna be games and darts and whatever. Adorable. Good for her. She decides she needs to find some retail space, and she finds one that Bill, Scumbag Bill, happens to own. He's somehow away for like 2 weeks, so he's just like, yeah, I'll just show it to you when I'm back. And she's like, okay. And she explicitly states that she's not looking at any other retail opportunities. She only likes this place. She only likes this one small town. Okay, that is not how real estate should work. You should look at other places. So Cammy goes to like see the place and like sits down to lunch with him and like talks about what she wants to do with the space and all of that. And Maddox comes in to surprise her. I don't know why he knew she was there and not at home, but like whatever. And Bill implies that he's on a date with Cammy, which is not what's happening. And they all get into a tizzy about it. And there's like this stupid argument. And it's like, you knew that she hated the guy. And she literally told you at the table she's not into it. Like, there's no reason that this should have been a thing, except for the fact that they just don't communicate and shouldn't be in a relationship until they can learn to communicate. Also, they're not exclusive, so fuck off, Maddox. She can be on a date if she wants to, but it's not a date. It's a whole thing that lasts for approximately a chapter and a half, and then it's resolved. Slim Big Bill comes back in later trying to claim that, like, Maddox submitted the original plans and not the edited plans that let her keep her dead mom tree. And it's just, like, an error. Like, a clerical error. And it's resolved so quickly. Like, they resolved the main conflict that wasn't even a good conflict too early, and then they have to, like, pad out the rest of the word count, and it's just not working. But, like, after this Bill thing resolves, Maddox tells her that she's gonna be his girlfriend. He's like, mine. Mine. Okay, maybe ask her? I know that there's something hot about a guy being like, I'm claiming my property, you're gonna be mine, kind of a thing, but, like, I feel like Maddox hasn't earned that. There's definitely, like, a better way that the author could have presented that. It would have been more fun if he'd, like, burst out with, like, I just want you to be mine, nobody else's, instead of just, like, kissing her and being like, mine, like the fucking seagulls from Nemo. God, there's nothing more sexy. They have sex again, because why not? He does this weird thing where they're, like, in doggy and he bites her back, like, not her shoulder, which is, like, a normal place to bite, and it's not, like, anywhere near her ass, which, like, I could see, but, like, just, like, her mid-low back. Also, this woman is skinny. There's nothing to bite there except, like, her rib cage. I didn't understand that part. Maybe I'm just not kinky enough, but I didn't, like, biting I can get behind. That's just a weird spot to choose, dude. After they're, like, officially together, they go back to her dad and show him the contract, and he gives them their blessing, and they invite him over for Thanksgiving dinner with all of them too many brothers, and there's still 20% of this book left to go. How is there still 20% of this book left to go? Everything has been resolved. We're done. We're good. We don't need anything else. Yeah, so it's just, like, a bunch of epilogues, and we get to see Maddox proposing after 4 months. maybe 3.5. I'm gonna check off Insta Love. It's an epilogue that could have been like a year later or 2 years later. They could have like stretched it. Instead they were like, no, now. Now. And then the worst part is there's an epilogue after that epilogue that shows Cammy running her beautiful cafe board game store that she wanted, because she's not going to go travel or go teach places because she is a man now and wants to be close to him, so her dreams are dead. This book suffered from a lot of different issues. Mostly that it lacked any sort of spark between the two people. Also that the main male character was just kind of... And it could have been enhanced with some conflict. If Maddox had been more of an asshole, I feel like he really could have done something to the plot. Also, I didn't get bingo this time. They had talked about how hot he is. I didn't really get like a rippling muscles part. So close. So close. But yes, that is Taming the CEO. I have officially checked off CEO romance from the list. Enemies to lovers, got that done. Thank you very much to Layla Hayes, to the author for providing us with this entertainment. Thank you for sticking with me this long. If you have any terrible book suggestions, please leave them in the comments, or palate cleansers. You can recommend me something good. Lord knows I need it. All right. I will see you next time.